Hello class, I hope everything's going well as you're starting you're finishing up your last paper, the final. I just wanted to go over a few of the common errors that I see in papers and in business writing. So like I said, this is common to academic writing as well as business writing, things that I see in my day job as well. Um, the number one issue that I see in papers and in business writing is the lack of a thesis or subject. Um, and so the problem this causes is either um, because there is no clear thesis or subject to the paper, the writing either wanders and is too long, or it's not focused enough and so it's too short. Um, And so, a thing to keep in mind with your thesis is that it is a table of contents or a roadmap for your paper. And it should tell the reader exactly what your position is and what you will argue in your paper. The reader needs to know where you're going. Everything in your paper should support the thesis in some way. And so, all of your arguments should link back to that thesis in some way. And then when you get to the end of your paper, your conclusion should reference back to the thesis and kind of make a circular argument. We're returning to this original argument. And, it's right because of this, this, and this. Um, as an example, let's go to the student sample for the researched argument paper. And the thesis, this student has put it here in italics and underlined it so that it's easy to find. Now, there are a few things that I would change in this thesis if I were writing it. The word offenders and sex offenders is used several times, so I'd probably reword it to say, in order to rehabilitate um, offenders and protect the community, juveniles who commit sexual offenses should not be required to register as sex offenders, just so I'm not repeating a word over and over. But for what it is, it's great, and it shows the reader exactly where the writer is going to go, what the argument is going to be. It's stated very clearly here. And so that's something that I would encourage you to do, is to look at your thesis, look at it and see if it's focused, if it's clear like this. And the reader can tell just by reading that statement exactly what you're going to argue in your paper. Um, the sorry, we pulled out of this. The next issue that I see in papers is noun pronoun agreement in writing. And so what this is what it generally comes from is a desire to have a gender neutral text when we're writing. 10 or 20 years ago, it was fine to use the pronouns he, his as a universal pronoun for both men and women. When we're talking, for example, this, a student has certain responsibilities to his alma mater. Um, 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, we would have taken this to mean that a student, being a man or a woman, and then the his, we would assume is a man or a woman. That isn't the case any longer. And so to fix this, you'll see people strain a little bit to fix this. And so what we commonly do in our speech to try to correct this is we use the plural pronoun, but we use the singular noun, a student. So a student has certain responsibilities to their alma mater. There is a plural pronoun referring back to a singular noun, and so that's incorrect. And there are a few ways to fix this. One of the way, a wordier way, is to say a student has certain responsibilities to his or her alma mater. That's one way to fix it. Just use both pronouns. An easier way to fix it is to make the noun a plural noun. Students have certain responsibilities to their alma maters. Notice though that when we do this, we have to change the the some of the other nouns in the sentence to plural nouns. So students we've changed have certain responsibilities to their alma mater, so now these match up, students and their. But we've also had to make alma maters plural because now that we have multiple students, they could be coming from multiple schools, and so that's something that you need to be aware of. There are a few websites that I can suggest to look at this and to look at your sentences and see if you're having problems with noun and pronoun agreement. And the third area where I've seen a lot of issues is in-text citations, and I know several of you have asked questions about making certain that you're citing sources correctly in APA style. And so this is the way that you would want to cite something in APA style. You would do the citation, or the quoted material, sorry, here, and notice that the last period, and you could have another sentence before this, and you would do a period before this, but on the last sentence in that quote, the period is not included inside the quotation mark. I do the citation, the page number and everything inside parentheses, and then the final period goes here after the parentheses. If there are more than one author, you just list the author who's listed first in the published work, and then write et al. After, which is Latin for and others. And so that's how you would do that in text. On your resources page, you would list all of those authors. If a quote ends in an exclamation point or a question mark, though, there's a different way that you need to do that. And so you'll notice here that because it ends in a question mark, I've included that question mark so that the reader reads that as a question. However, I also include a final period here after the parentheses. The same is true with an exclamation point, so that the reader reads it correctly. You would leave the comma here. Now, ellipses, they should be used only to show that that you've pulled out some irrelevant information in that quoted material. And you need to make certain that it really is irrelevant information. For example, this is would be my suggestion for this really long quote. The quote was really long. It went on and on and on and never seemed to end. It was the longest quote ever, I think. It seemed to have no end. If I were to shorten that, I would shorten it like this. This quote was really long. The quote was really long. Then ellipses, it seemed to have no end. In the end, so I'm pulling out redundant information that we don't need to repeat. It doesn't have anything to do with what the point I'm trying to get from the quoted material. And then if you're just ending the quote, you don't need to do an ellipses. So if I'm just quoting this first sentence, at the very beginning here, I don't need to include ellipses in here. The reader understands that you're going to have sentences that come before and then that come after, and so you don't need to include ellipses. One thing that you want to make sure of is that you're not using ellipses to make it appear as if the writer that you're quoting is saying something that he or she is not. And you'll see this a lot of times in when somebody is quoting a politician or a religious leader that they don't agree with. They'll kind of twist the quotes and pull out information and use ellipses to make it look like that person's saying something opposite to what their original message was. And so you don't want to do that in your writing. And let's go just to the sample paper so you can see some of the ways that this this student has quoted the material, and this is a way to do it so that you don't have all of the information coming at the end. And so, this very first cited material, Garfinkel putting the year that the report was written, reports that it wasn't until 1985 that the first registration laws were enacted. And so it goes through all of this material that the writer is referencing. We get to the quote here and then the page number. And that's a way to do it to kind of add variety to your writing, so that you're not just putting the citation always at the end. The reason that this is helpful is because the reader knows up front who you're quoting, and can decide whether or not this is something I agree with or is important. Going down to the references page of this, I just want to show you a few things to make certain that you understand these. You'll notice here that some of the authors used in this cited in this report are listed multiple times, and the reason is they wrote multiple articles or books on this subject matter, and that's probably something you've found as you've done your research, is that sometimes there's a writer who writes a lot. In that case, of course, then we want the year. However, you'll notice that that this source, there were two written in that same year, right here and here. And so in that case, you'd put the A after and the B after, and you'd use that citation method within the text so that the reader knows which ones you're citing. And so, and here's an example again of citing a source that has more than one author. This is the correct way to do that. And so I'd encourage you to look at this sample paper, see the ways that the student does this, and use those methods in your own report, so that that you're making certain that you're citing things correctly, that you've set it up correctly. A couple of things that I wanted to touch on also in this report are just, of course, the different headings, the section headings, and I think the author here has done a great job of setting these up. You'll notice at these headings that the author doesn't say opposing views. He uses things, though, to help you realize that he's setting up an opposing argument. So let's see. There's a section here where let's see. It's called Myths of here we go. Myth 1, similarity to adult sex offenders. And so he's setting these up as, this is one myth about it, and then here's the actual evidence of it. And so that's, he is able to introduce those opposing views, create an argument against it. And he does that very well throughout. The effects of labeling on offender. And so you've got both headings, section headings, and subheadings within that. Now that's not something that you have to do, but it will make it much easier for the reader to navigate your paper and to realize, what, we're shifting gears a little bit here to something else, and it prepares them for that. And so that's something that I would suggest. You don't have to do it, but it'll make your paper more powerful and your writing more powerful. And so just a few things with that. Make certain that before you hand in your paper, you go over and make certain that you're meeting all of these requirements for the paper. The body of your paper should be 3,000 words. and that's 10 to 12 pages about, and that's the body of your paper, not including the resources page or the title page. And with that, don't think you can adjust the font size or the margins to reach that page count. The word count is what is important here, and that's something that I'll easily be able to see as I open up your documents. And so make certain that you're following that. Just a couple of things to help you in this as you're finishing up your paper. Last week, in the notes section, I posted a few videos to show you examples of A work and B work essays. And so I'd suggest that you take a look at these videos here as well. They'll help you to know exactly what you need to do. Also, if you go to the announcements, I know for some of you the arguments textbook has not been working. It's an ongoing issue that they're having with all of the classes, and so I apologize for that issue. I had created, and now I'm not finding it. I had created an announcement with a PDF of those, and I don't see it here. Let me set it up. I am going to save those PDFs again, and I'll save them in this folder, the Arguments ebook folder. Actually, here we've got it. I've set it up here. Chapter 16 reading. If you're unable to access that via the website, that is there. And so hopefully that's helpful to you. If you have any questions about the paper at all, please feel free to contact me. I'm available to talk about those or help in any way that I can. One thing also that I wanted to cover is an opportunity for you to receive extra credit. And that's to take this survey on research arguments drafts. It's just a survey about the draft discussion board that we just participated in. If you take this survey and then come to the notes from this week and comment here, comment on my thread here, you'll receive 5 extra credit points for the final paper. And so I'd encourage you to do that, to take the opportunity to receive those extra credit points. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. All right, thanks and good luck on your paper.